There are moments in golf that don't announce themselves loudly. No trophy raised above a champion's head, no final putt disappearing into the cup, no eruption from the crowd, just one decision, quiet on the surface, almost invisible to the casual observer. But if you truly follow this game, if you genuinely understand what it looks like to carry pressure at the very top, then you already know that some choices say more than any victory ever could. They reveal character. They reveal priorities. They reveal the kind of mental architecture that separates good players from all-time greats. And that is exactly why Scottie Scheffler's latest move has the entire golf world buzzing. Because this wasn't about one tournament. It wasn't a simple scheduling tweak buried in a press release. It felt bigger than that. It felt deliberate. It felt like a man drawing a line in the sand and saying, quietly but unmistakably, I decide where I play, and I decide why. That kind of statement hits differently when it comes from the number one player in the world. The reason this landed so hard on fans is actually pretty simple when you think about it. When the best golfer on the planet voluntarily steps away from a marquee event, people don't just notice it, they can't stop thinking about it. They don't just ask what happened. They ask why. They ask what it means. Is he protecting his game from burnout? Is he sending a quiet signal to the tour about player autonomy? Is he preparing his body and mind for something far bigger on the horizon? Or is this one of those rare, unscripted moments that strips away all the noise and shows you exactly who Scottie Scheffler really is when the expectations keep piling higher and higher? Stay with me, because the deeper you look into this story, the more fascinating it becomes. And if you genuinely love golf, if this sport stirs something real in you, and if you appreciate stories that go beyond the leaderboard and into the human beings actually playing the game, then you are in exactly the right place. The decision that split the room. Scottie Scheffler shocked a significant portion of the golf world by choosing to skip the Truist Championship, one of the PGA Tour's premier signature events. The reaction came fast and it came divided. Some people respected the decision immediately and without hesitation. Others genuinely couldn't believe what they were hearing. And that split reaction makes complete sense, because in today's version of professional golf, signature events are built to feel inescapable. The prize funds are enormous. The fields are stacked with the biggest names in the sport. The media coverage is wall to wall. These are the weeks designed to concentrate the game's star power into one unmissable spectacle. So when the man sitting at the very top of the world rankings looks at all of that and calmly says, "Not this week," it doesn't just change the conversation around that particular tournament. It changes the conversation around him. On the surface, the reasoning sounds almost too straightforward. Rest. Recovery. Preparing his body and his mind for the major championships that define legacies. Managing a schedule that has already demanded enormous amounts of his energy. Honestly, all of that makes complete sense. Scottie has never seemed like a player who chases headlines or craves the spotlight for its own sake. He doesn't move through this sport like someone performing for an audience. He moves like someone who has a very clear destination in mind and is focused entirely on getting there. But here is the part that doesn't get discussed nearly enough. Golf fans, particularly the ones who grew up loving this game through its most storied eras, are conditioned to expect greatness to prove itself by showing up everywhere. The old-school culture of the sport romanticizes the grinder, the competitor who plays every big week, faces every rival, lets the long season wear him down to the bone and then finds a way to survive it anyway. That image, the warrior who never backs down from a spotlight, is woven deeply into how many fans understand what it means to be the best. Scottie's decision challenged that image head-on. Instead of feeding the machine, he stepped outside of it entirely. He made it clear, whether people liked it or not, that being the number one player in the world does not automatically mean saying yes to every stage that is offered to you. Sometimes, perhaps most powerfully, it means saying no at the exact moment when everyone around you is expecting you to say yes. What this actually tells us about Scottie Scheffler. Once the initial shock began to settle, a deeper and more interesting question started surfacing in the conversations happening across golf communities everywhere. What does this decision actually reveal about where Scottie Scheffler is right now? Not just as a golfer or a competitor, but as a person navigating the enormous and relentless weight of being the best in the world at something millions of people care deeply about. This is a player who already knows what it feels like to exist under that specific kind of scrutiny. Every single round he plays gets judged through a different lens than everyone else in the field. Every result gets magnified. A win is not celebrated as an achievement, it is simply filed away as expected. A runner-up finish, which would represent a career highlight for most professional golfers on the planet, somehow becomes a talking point, a question mark, an invitation for debate about whether something is wrong. When you live inside that reality for long enough, the pressure does not just come from the golf course itself. It comes from the schedule, from the cameras that follow your every expression, from the storylines that writers and commentators build around your name, from the constant and unrelenting expectation that you must be available, visible, dominant, and engaged every single week without exception. That is exhausting in a way that goes far beyond physical fatigue. It gets into your head. It changes the texture of the game you once loved. And Scottie Scheffler, whether this was a conscious message or simply a quiet act of self-preservation, reminded everyone watching that elite professional golf is not only about swing mechanics and scorecards. It is about energy management. It is about timing. It is about protecting the sharpest parts of your focus so that when the moments that truly define careers arrive, you are ready to meet them fully. That is not weakness. That is not avoidance. That is a form of discipline that most people never develop because they never have to operate at the level that demands it. The fans who felt let down. Still, not everyone was ready to frame this as wisdom. Some fans felt genuinely disappointed, and that reaction deserves to be taken seriously rather than dismissed. When you invest emotionally in a major tournament week, when you clear your schedule to watch or even travel to attend, you want the absolute best players in the world on that stage. You want the feeling that nothing is being held back, that the biggest names have nowhere to hide, that the week represents a true and complete test of who is best right now. Scottie's absence created a hole that no other player could quite fill. It wasn't that the remaining field wasn't talented. It was that the drama felt slightly incomplete before a single shot had been played. And that specific kind of disappointment, the sense of something missing that you cannot quite replace, is one of the most honest emotions in sports fandom. So the story sits right in the tension between two things that are both genuinely true at the same time. Golf fans deserve complete fields and the full drama that comes with them. And professional athletes, including the very best ones, are human beings who need to make intelligent choices about where they spend their finite competitive energy. Both of those things are real. Both of them matter. And the fact that they sometimes pull in opposite directions is not a problem to be solved. It is simply the reality of what it means to care about this sport. The plot twist that changed everything. Here is where the story became something richer and more layered than a simple absence. Not long after the news about skipping the Truist Championship spread through the golf world, it also emerged that Scheffler would be making his first ever appearance at the 3M Open later in the summer. And suddenly, the entire picture shifted. Because now this wasn't about a player retreating or pulling away from competition. It was about a player constructing his own path through the season, on his own terms, at his own rhythm. The 3M Open appearance told a completely different story than the one many had initially started writing. It told fans that this is not someone drifting away from the game or coasting on his ranking. This is someone actively deciding exactly where and when he wants to compete, and making those choices with a level of intentionality that most players never apply to their schedules. There is a meaningful difference between avoiding competition and choosing competition thoughtfully. One suggests a player who is backing away from challenge. The other suggests a player who respects the game enough to show up only when he can truly honor it with everything he has. Scottie Scheffler is doing the second thing. And when you see it that way, the picture becomes almost admirable. What greatness actually requires. The very best athletes in any sport eventually reach a point in their careers where they stop living by everyone else's script. They stop performing for the external narrative and start listening to the internal signals that tell them where their best competitive self can actually be found. They become, in the truest sense, deliberate. They are not reactive. They are not emotional. They are simply very clear about what they need in order to be their best when the stakes are highest. That is where Scottie Scheffler appears to be right now. And in a strange way, that kind of clarity can actually make fans more emotionally invested, not less. Because golf fans do not just invest in outcomes. They invest in presence. They invest in feeling connected to the players who are defining this era of the sport. When a player like Scottie makes a move that communicates long-term thinking rather than short-term noise, it can feel almost personal. Not because fans are angry, but because they care enough to feel the tension. Think honestly about what professional golf demands from the players who reach the very top of it. Precision under pressure that would paralyze most human beings. Patience in the face of noise and distraction. Consistency in a sport specifically designed to find and expose every weakness a competitor carries. Now add on to that the weight of the modern tour schedule, the constant travel, the media obligations, the endless conversation around rankings and majors and legacy and money and comparisons to the greatest players who ever lived. Somewhere inside all of that, a player has to actively protect the part of himself that still genuinely loves hitting a golf ball. The part that got him here in the first place. Maybe skipping this event was not just strategy. Maybe it was an act of love for the game itself. Maybe it was Scottie's way of ensuring that when he walks onto the next truly significant stage, he brings not just a technically immaculate golf swing, but a clear mind, a hungry heart, and the full version of himself rather than a worn-down imitation of it. A gamble with no guarantees. If that is the case, then this decision will look entirely different in hindsight depending on what happens next. If Scheffler shows up at the next major refreshed and dangerous, playing with the kind of controlled aggression that his best golf has always carried, people will not call this decision shocking anymore. They will call it masterful. They will say this was the moment that revealed Scottie understood the bigger picture better than anyone else in the field. But sports does not come with guarantees. If the next big week does not go his way, the criticism will be louder and the second-guessing will be relentless. That is the risk that lives inside every deliberate choice a champion makes. And that risk, that genuine uncertainty about how the story ends, is exactly what makes this such a compelling sports narrative. We do not yet know how this chapter finishes. We only know that a choice was made, a meaningful one, and that the consequences are still unfolding. Why this story sticks? At its core, this is not a story about a skipped tournament. It is a story about the impossible demands that modern professional sport places on the people talented enough to reach the very top of it. It is a story about what happens when the world's best player decides to draw a boundary that the world did not ask for and did not expect. Scottie Scheffler's decision surprised people. It frustrated some of them. But it also did something that very few moments in a long season actually manage to do. It made us think. It made us ask questions that go beyond the scorecard. It reminded us that the athletes we watch and admire are navigating something far more complicated than 18 holes of golf. They are navigating the full weight of human ambition, expectation, fatigue, and the constant challenge of staying true to yourself when everyone around you has a very clear idea of who they want you to be. That is why this story stays with you. Not because it was loud. Not because it created controversy for its own sake. But because it was real. Because it was human. And because somewhere in the middle of all of it, it reminded us that even the greatest players in the world are still figuring out the same fundamental question that every one of us faces in our own way. When do you push forward? When do you pause? And what truly matters most when everything is on the line and the whole world is watching and waiting to judge the result? Scottie Scheffler gave us his answer. Now it is up to the game itself to respond. So I want to ask you directly, do you think Scottie made the right call, or should the world number one be competing in every signature event available to him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This conversation is worth having. And if you love golf stories that go deeper than the highlights, stay with this channel, because this game never stops giving us reasons to talk.